All right, so we've been talking about functions for the last week or so, okay, and we've been talking about domain and range. So today we're going to just kind of recap all that, go over a few examples, review the vertical line test, which we talked about before we came home. And we're going to go over a couple more examples of domain and range, just so that we know exactly what that looks like, okay? So looking at the first thing that we're going to do today, we're going to create our own function, okay? So remember, functions are when each input of the relation is mapped to exactly one output of the domain. Can't have more than one output for each input. So coming up with a function below, we can do it with numbers, we can do it with real life examples. I'm going to do it with numbers just because typically when we work with functions, they're with numbers. So let's pick some random numbers. Let's do -6, 4, and 19.
7.
And 7. Deal. Okay. Then we're going to map those inputs. Okay, we're going to map those inputs to their outputs. So let's have that be 0, 14, and -43, just because. Okay, so we're going to map each of these inputs to their output. So let's say -6 is mapped to 0, 4 can also be mapped to 0, 19 is mapped to -43, and 7 is mapped to 14. We don't know the function rule, we just know that this is what the mapping is. So inputs, outputs. Where the arrow starts is the input, where the arrow ends is the output. The domain for this function is just a list of everything that is the inputs. So looking right here, my inputs are going to be -6, 4, 19, and 7. We're just listing out what's given to us, okay? Our range is just a list of the outputs. Our outputs are 0, 14, and -43. So 0, 14, -43 is our range. Just a list of those things. Nothing fancier than that. Let's do an example where we have some ordered pairs, okay? So let's say we have ordered pairs 0, 2, 4, 7, and 9, -3, okay? These are just random ordered pairs that I just came up with, okay? The domain for this is all of the inputs, and input is just a fancy word for X, okay? So our domain is going to be all of the X's listed out. So in this case, the X's are 0, 4, and 9. Those are our X coordinates, okay? Our range for this example, if domain is X, range is going to be Y, okay? And all of my Y coordinates are going to make up my range. So my range here is 2, 7, -3, okay? Give an example that is not a function and explain why. I'm only going to do one here because hopefully above we understand what domain and range is. And I'm going to do a mapping. And we want to make one that's not a function. So for something not to be a function, at least one input has to be mapped to multiple outputs. So let's say my inputs are 4 and 13, and my output is only 6. Okay, or let's do 6, 7, and 15. Okay, 4 is mapped to 15. Let's say 4 is also mapped to 6, and 13 is mapped to 7. This is not a function because 4 has 2 outputs. Okay, does anybody have any questions on that? Okay, this is not a function because one of the inputs has 2 different outputs. Function because each input has a different output, not a function because the input has two different outputs. Okay. It's going to bring us to our last thing that we're going to review for today, which is the vertical line test. Okay, so remember the vertical line test. Vertical line test, the VLT. This is a visual test to determine if a graph, only a graph, is a function or not. Okay, so for these examples, we're going to draw vertical lines on these pictures, on these graphs, to determine if they're functions. If at any point that vertical line passes through more than one point, okay, more than one point, it's not going to be a function. So looking at letter A, all of these points are only 1 point. There's no point above or below any of these 6 points. So letter A is going to be a function by the vertical line test. Letter B, if I draw a vertical line anywhere in letter B except for like right here, okay, it's going to pass through 2 points. 1, 2, 1, 2, etc. all the way across. So letter B is not going to be a function because of the vertical line test. Letter C, draw vertical lines anywhere on this line. It only passes through 1 point. So C will be a function by the vertical line test. And last but not least, D, if I draw a vertical line anywhere on this fancy U, called a parabola, it only passes through 1 point. So letter D will also be a function. So the only non-function is going to be B, okay? I know we know how to find ordered pairs, so I'm going to skip number 6, which just asks you to find ordered pairs for points on these pictures. Are we okay with that, or do we need to go over that? We're all right? All right, easy enough.